Welcome to Wellspring Wednesday. Wherever you are, we are glad you are with us today. Please enter as fully into worship as you can by lighting your chalice and singing and praying along with Drew and I. We are also very glad to welcome back Joshua and Sachs and Simon. We are the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl, descended from slaves and raised by a single mom, can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. You might recognize these words from Amanda Gorman, the youngest poet to perform at a U.S. presidential inauguration. While listening to her poem, I was filled with prophetic curiosity, the kind of curiosity that says, look, see, imagine, what if? The kind of curiosity that is worthy of our hope, is worthy of our dreams. Quote, "We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be." Indeed, what if? Come, let us worship together. Each week we take the time to listen to the joys and sorrows alive in our congregation. Together we celebrate, we grieve, and we tenderly hold what is as well as what we long for. Drew and I will continue to reach out via email to ask families to share with us, and feel free to send your joys and sorrows whenever you are so moved. This week we are sharing from our 5th graders. Lucas Kibble says, "My joy is getting to return to in-person school this week. So excited to see all of my friends. And my sorrow is that COVID still exists." From the Kempke and Duke family, our big joy this week is that Luca, our 5th grader, gets to go to school tomorrow. He is super excited. Abby Gernsney's joy is she and her family are moving to their own house soon. She is excited to set up her room. Dan Hilster and Hope Barker have a sorrow. Our friend Lael Becker died last Friday. Lael grew up attending Sunday school at Unity Church. Clay artwork she helped create is still hanging up in the hallway here. Carl Lloyd shares, a 5th grader. Her joy is that she is going sledding and skiing tomorrow, and her sorrow is that she can't see her friends in person. And a general sorrow for all the victims of recent hate crimes that have left too many of our siblings suffering and grieving. We pray for transformation, for justice, for peace. Come pray with me. God of many names and beyond all naming, we know you to be prophetic curiosity, vision, imagination, change, the sacred that is the breath behind what if. We ask for guidance from each other and from you, what is beyond us, ever enduring, ever creating. Help us to have humility and gall. Humility and gall. Help us to proclaim our joys and our truths. Help us to listen to the other, including the other close to home. Really listen to the heart of the other that proclaims a conflicting joy, a conflicting truth. When we find ourselves in such conflict, may we learn from curiosity. What if we could learn from each other, not at the expense of either of us? What if we could be transformed by such conflict to become the love that has gone through the fire of thought and experience, the kind of love that has encountered the holy, that trusts the self, is relational, and that relationship includes the self? What if? May it be so, and amen.
Amen. Do you ever imagine yourself doing anything amazing? Do you imagine yourself doing some kind of physical, athletic, balletic, amazing move, a throw, a jump, a twist, a maneuver that just defies gravity, death-defying, electrifying, and amazing? Do you ever imagine yourself doing that? Well, to imagine yourself doing that, you have to picture it, right? And to picture it, you've got to allow yourself to think, what if? What if I could? What if I could just? Because you can't do it if you can't picture it. So today, the story I want to tell you is the story of basketball. Basketball is a great story. I don't know how many of you play basketball. I'm not great at basketball, but I sure like to watch it because the game of basketball is amazing. And it's a beautiful game. The things those athletes do on the court is amazing. And that is not always the way it was with basketball. So we know that basketball was invented. We know exactly when it was invented and by who. The guy's name was James Naismith, and he was a minister and a Phi Ed teacher in a YMCA training school, a college in Springfield, Massachusetts. YMCA, Young Men's Christian Association. This was a college that trained young men to go into missionary work. The dean of that school asked him, James, we need something in the winter months when it's cold, when the kids are not outside. We need something to get them active, playing, a team sport, something that is high energy, get some exercise. Now, it's hard to imagine this, but in 1891, there really wasn't anything like that. All of the big team games were outside, right? So James thought about football, he thought about soccer, he thought about rugby, and all of these games, thinking, how could this transfer to something inside? So maybe you know this story. He actually had 2 peach baskets nailed to either end of a board, a railing around the gymnasium, and he got a soccer ball, and he got his class together. He had 19 kids. So at this first time, it was 18 kids, and it was 9 on a side. And the way the game was played was you could not run with the ball. You had to throw the ball to someone. They would throw it back. And then you had to try to put it into the peach basket. A lot of people walking slowly around, looking for a toss, looking for it back, and then reaching out to try to hit the peach basket. Believe it or not, they loved this game. They loved it. Even though every time the ball went in the peach basket, you know what had to happen? The janitor had to go and get a ladder, go to the peach basket, and pull the ball out. That's right. So what do you think the score was of that first game? 1-0. And they loved it. Now, here's an amazing thing that happened here. Even though this game seemed like not much to it, because of that class, because of the class that it was, there was actually a multicultural makeup in that class. There were some people from China, from Spain, from Europe, and they were being trained to go out. And so very quickly, these young men took this game with them, and it is recorded that by 1894, the game is being played in Europe, in China, in the Middle East. So, being that it was all out there, all of these guys playing this game at the same time, and I think because of the multicultural element of it, this was never a game that was just this is the way it's played. There was a freedom to say, what if we did something different? What if we tried something different? Well, the first thing actually was the janitor. You might suppose this, the janitor who said, what if we cut a hole in the basket? Now, that simple thing, imagine how that changed the game. With the ball going through the basket, they didn't have to stop every time. They didn't have to start after every basket, so the game could move quicker. In about 1894, as the game was being played at other YMCAs and other colleges, there were friends of James Naismith who said, James, 18 people, that's a lot of people in our gymnasium. Could we play it with fewer people? And they thought about it, sure. And they came up with 5-on-5. And today, it is still played 5-on-5. Now, something that happened with 5-on-5 is there's more room. There's more room to move around. They weren't just all on top of each other. And this kind of aired the game out, which actually made them think, what are things we could do differently? Remember, that first game, for those first 5 or 6 years, no dribbling, just throwing it back and forth. So one young man said, could we take one step? He said, no, that's against the rules. They said, so what if we kind of like threw it to ourselves and took a step? Could we do that? And they thought about that, and they tried to picture it, and that didn't really seem to work. So someone said, could we bounce it to ourselves? And they decided, let's try it. What if? What if we try that? And so, for the next 10 years, the game had this huge modification where they would catch the ball and bounce it to themselves. Okay? Sounds exciting, doesn't it? Now, the story goes that in 1904, in Greece, there was a group of boys playing, and one of the boys, who we'll call Dimitri, said, he heard the rules wrong, and he thought that he could bounce and step, bounce and step, bounce and step, and they said, Dimitri, no, that's wrong. But then they thought, what if we did that? And very quickly, that idea got back to the States, and you know what that was? Dribbling. This game had this to it. This had this continue on over those early years. For some reason, it wasn't important to get rules down that would not change. It was open to people saying, what if we did this? And this was happening internationally. And another place it was happening was in the United States. Now, say what you will about the Catholic Church and the goals of their missionary societies. One thing they did do in those years is they did bring programs to inner city schools. And so they would go into the largest cities and they would have programs for the youth in the area that would include the Phi Ed program, and so they brought this great new invention of theirs, of basketball. And what this meant that there was the introduction to the African American population. Now, a couple of big things that happened with this. These buildings and facilities that they had often did not have gymnasiums, did not have good places to practice this game, so the game moved outside. As it moved outside, something that happened is they had to say, where do the peach baskets go? So just think of this. Someone thought, well, how do we do this? And they thought, we put up a pole, and we put up a backboard, and we put a rim on it. And so still in early years, still in about 1910, the idea of the backboard and the rim and all of that was invented. Also, with the African American players and playing outside, this was a group that was not, again, confined by what is the most rule-bound way we can play this. This was an athletic outside sport being played by young people really putting their efforts into it. And over the next 10 years or so, they started to, run. They started to run while they were playing. And they started to throw the ball from all over. And since the game was being played internationally, this was being communicated all around the world. We can play this game fast. We can play this game creative. Amazing. So it's not all that amazing to me to understand. I didn't know this before. But basketball was actually the first major sport to integrate back in 1940. And I think about that. I think that the people who were watching it and playing it were saying, how could we possibly not have the greatest players be involved in this game? What could this game be if we are bringing the very best? And so, think of basketball today. Think of where it has gone. Think of layups, slams, no looks, behind the back. At the All-Star game, what do we see? We see games of 140 to 120, and we see competitions of slams, creativity. This sport is founded on the idea of what if. What if? International, multicultural vision of beauty, creativity. What a blast, and what a slam dunk!
Please join us in singing Be Thou My Vision on page 20.
What can we imagine that we could do if we're free to say, what if? I pray that we feel that ability to say what if, that we can encourage each other. What if? What could we be? What could we do? May that be so.